state is doing tremendous amount of work right now to help communities create more housing. So even from that perspective, I would be really surprised. So we're going to hope for the best, because this is a great plan. Any other questions?
Yeah.
I have a related question. So I'm out of the loop and don't know about this donation or when this happened vis-a-vis the work on this plan. If that goes through and if housing happens up there, does that change at all the thinking of other areas that were targeted for additional housing?
I don't think so. You mean, like, would it change those dots that are on the map?
I think so. I mean, I don't know anything about
Yeah.
the amount of land or the amount of housing that could potentially go up there. I don't know if anybody does, so I just don't know the extent to which that was taken into account in the planning.
Yeah, so Lloyd's saying that all has to go through the planning board. I don't think any decisions have been made. It's more that, like, here's an area that now could be considered. And I don't want to speak for Garrett or Chris or the committee members. I don't think that would necessarily change the ideas that were developed for some of these other areas too. They all are still valid.
Yeah, I think you need to think about the comprehensive plan as like it's like a policy guide, right? It's sort of a roadmap in the future. So you're really identifying, the need for more housing, and these are some strategies that we're going to look to explore, and then that sort of trickles down into more specifics. And so the comp plan is like way up high, and that opportunity is like sort of interim, and then there's more specifics about like how that actually gets developed. So to me, think about, one of the things that popped up is we need more in a variety of housing types. Comprehensive plan supports that. It identifies areas where it may be appropriate to do, and then you have to think about your ordinance structure. Then you have to think about where it's going to go vis-a-vis the land. Then you have to think about how that gets approved and designed and all that stuff. So it's really much more higher level. So it really wouldn't change anything from that perspective.
Does that help answer your question? Okay, great. Yeah.
I just happened to take a gander in the big book, and the population projections, it has for Carrabassett Valley the population continually declining slightly. How did they come up with those numbers?
Yeah, so those numbers look at sort of percent change when they project it forward. So we always have to take these numbers with a grain of salt or two. They also, I'd have to go back and look specifically at that table. They're not factoring in, I think, some of the dynamics of the pandemic. We're seeing this in a lot of communities that we work with, where there's actually, an unexpected number of people that just decided to leave cities in general and move to smaller towns. But I'm not really sure how to answer that beyond that they kind of calculate the percent change of what has taken place up to a certain point, and then it's kind of projected forward. But it's also very difficult to do demographic analysis in a small town, because a lot of when you look at like a decennial census, that is a count, but a lot of data that comes out of the census comes from what's called the American Community Survey, and those are surveys, and so the sample size can be quite small, which means the margins of error can be larger. Yeah. But Garrett actually has something very cool to tell you about this topic that I'm just remembering. Would you like the microphone?
Just yesterday, we had an undergrad intern from Orno. Wow, that's loud. From Orno, just finished a semester-long project looking into the population change in Carrabassett Valley in the 20th century, and that report was just delivered to the town yesterday. It's undergraduate level, it's not graduate level, so I'll just leave it there. But it's good, and it estimates that because we know anecdotally that this town is not. I don't think anyone in this room would feel like this town has declined in population feel. How many people are living here year-round versus part-time? That's something that is debatable. But in terms of, if you think about all the part-time people, it's a pretty vibrant town, obviously. So we'll have a little more meat to put on that. He doesn't project into the future, though. It was just looking at what's happened based on different data points. So that might be something we could work on for the next comp plan.
Part of what's important about the population data too is so when we start to look at that, again, it's a statistical projection that's based on past information. And I haven't seen many towns in Maine that we worked on where they haven't projected that the population is actually going down. But I think what that leads us to is to think of that as one data point that we look at. And then I think Garrett brings up a good point that it's, what are the other elements of the population that we should be looking at? Is it maybe that's a year-round population is slightly projected to go down, but the seasonal population is increasing, or we really would more focus on what that means. So if you take population and other things in the full context of the comprehensive plan, that's really what sort of paints the picture of how it informs goals and strategies, not specifically that one data point. So aging population, are you getting a lot of young people, or do you need to attract more families? If there's a lot of kids in school, what does that mean? All those questions start to trickle out of a full picture of population change over time.
Was Penobscot Nation involved in any of the discussions? And if yes, what were their inputs?
That's a great question. Yes, Ron Bear was on the committee and did attend some of the meetings. He has to come from quite a distance. We did go and meet with them in person and spend a whole afternoon talking about the future land use map. And I think part of it is a discussion about the process, right? So because this comprehensive plan, the existing one, is so old, the town is really wise to go through this comprehensive planning process before making any additional zoning changes or modifications. So part of the conversation was about ideas they have for some of their land, but feeling perhaps like the current existing zoning or growth area doesn't necessarily allow the discussion of those things. And so talking about, well, it's really important to go through this process and then continue to be involved in any sort of zoning or land use changes that are proposed and discussed in the future. I thought we had a great dialogue. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. And they are a part of all of the communication that goes out to the committee. And then I think they came again when we talked about recreation and open space goals. And I was here in person for that one. That's where we talked about the idea of the cultural center and some of the other action strategies that are in the plan. So I think they wish they could have been here more often. I think they have constraints on Zoom as well, is my understanding. Do you want to add anything to that, or Chris?
I think maybe Chris could just talk about the last time we met with their economic development director. Sure. And Ron.
Ron and one of his
Mike
coworker, he's not tribal, but he's been doing a lot with the tribe. They had come over, 2 months ago when we were starting to hone in on the draft and kind of look at the future growth area map. One thing they've shared, and again, that's not a zoning map, but there's this thought amongst them that they can't do anything with their land other than cut trees. And it's like, no, that's not the case. So we worked through that. There is some areas that they look at that they can contribute with workforce housing. They had some discussions with Mark Green and that may still go somewhere in the future. So they were open to the growth area map that does add some areas. It also takes some area out around Reddington Pond, and we talked through that area is kind of way back there. It's not easy to get to. It's rocky, bony, swampy, not swampy in a bad way, a good natural area thing, so that we talked through that. And they were amenable and didn't take issue or exception with what was planned. Ron and Mike both said that they look forward to, assuming once this gets adopted, of where things can go from there. So it helps reopen that door and keep things moving in a forward direction instead of a backwards direction.
So the added area from the map, is that most of the Penobscot controlled land?
Yes, over where it says called Penobscot Hillside. Yeah,
There's some that was added up on the Crocker Slopes area on the west side of Caribou Pond Road that goes from what was growth area to what is now the boundary between one landowner and the Crocker project, it's Bureau of Parks and Lands. The other block, and it shows on that map, I think, as well, right, Suzanne?
Yeah.
We can look at that. The front part of the Jerusalem part of the outdoor center lot came out of the growth area, and then down in the valley proper is to expand up the hillsides in behind Judson's and Ayots, and in Julie's Pond Road or Hidden Pond or whatever you want to call it. One thing when we met with Ron and Mike and they were it was kind of rapid fire where I felt like I was on a hot seat and Mike kept saying, what about this, what about that, what about that? And one of the questions was, how come Reddington and the added portion to the right of it don't bridge the gap? And I said, well, that's the summit of, it doesn't have a name, but Reddington Hill, Reddington Mountain, that's kind of a high area that I personally, from a land use, wouldn't want to see that developed. I know that there's some beautiful views from up there that I've seen in years past, and like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I mean, we talked through it.
right.